Hello YouTube, it's Borders Dude and I'm back with a discussion video. Now the topic I'm discussing today is why is it that Combiner Wars is generally considered to be a bit of a flop? I believe Hasbro started the Combiner Wars line as a response to the third-party combiners that were coming out at the time. You had the likes of TFC, MMC, Make Toys, Warbotton, as well as a few other companies such as Unique Toys bringing out combiners of their own, and Hasbro seen a gap in the market for the masses. When I first heard of Hasbro doing the combiners, I was very excited, and those first images of Superion really did impress me. The only thing that confused me a little bit was the fact that you weren't getting the full set, the full team at the very least, in the first wave. And this was purely a marketing decision, and this was just down to trying to get some variety in the first wave of Combiner Wars. The problem that led to with Combiner Wars, in the UK at the very least, was that we never did officially receive Wave 2 in mass retail. I ended up having to pick up Air Raid through Kapow and the Stunticons through a third-party company called Joker's Toy Box, or independent company I should say. This made getting a hold of Air Raid in particular very difficult for a lot of collectors at the time, as quantities were limited with the Combiner Wars series as a whole. However, after that misstep, other waves came out relatively easily. The Protectobots came out absolutely fine, as well as the Combaticons and so forth. We then got some fantastic gift sets, such as the Computron gift set, which is very different from the Takara Unite Warriors line, which uses a lot of the molds but does retool them quite heavily. We also seen these combiner figures. Skip Titan's Return as part of the trilogy came back with Abominus and also Predaking in Titan form at the tail end of the trilogy with Power of the Primes. And let's not of course forget the fantastic Devastator. Still, in my opinion, the best looking Devastator we have had from any company. But the question still remains, why did people not take to Combiner Wars, or at least retroactively dislike Combiner Wars? One of the reasons I think a lot of people dislike them is, instead of keeping the original characters, they made some original characters. Now I am all for that, and I think it was a very clever move to try and introduce some new characters into the Transformers franchise. I can see a lot of people who grew up with the G1 and wanted all the Combiner teams as they were, and not getting them was a bit frustrating. We do know Hasbro did later on down the line give us, albeit in very limited quantities, Slingshot and also the additional figures for the Stunticons and Protectobots being Groove. The other thing that a lot of people didn't like, and I'm included in this one, is the incredible heavy use of the molds in each wave. Some had decent retooling, others did not. With the reuse of molds, what I seen very quickly, at least with my figures, it could just be bad QC, however I very much doubt it, is the fact that mold degradation was happening very rapidly. I noticed little things like Alpha Bravo's mold being used for the Defensor figure. The back of the helicopter blades did not tab in as they should have. The plastic quality just felt a bit rougher on the later releases as well. Whether that was a cost saving measure or just part of the molds degrading, I do not know. However, it was frustrating. We do have to remember that these figures were Scramble City, and the original G1 Scramble City limbs were also figures that were heavy retooled, and the fact they were able to keep the Scramble City aspect with these sets was incredible and a nice homage. One thing a lot of people didn't like either with the combiners was the hands and feet. Now I thought it was a cool feature that you're essentially getting an additional weapon for the limbs, but those hands, and especially the feet, didn't give the combiners a good grounding, coupled with somewhat ropey ratchets on the torso figures didn't always make for the most stable combiner figure. They did rectify this of course in the gift sets, but for people who bought the mainline releases and didn't want to buy gift sets, this was quite a blow and quite disappointing to a lot of people. The one combiner out of all the Combiner Wars that people do dislike the most has to be the Menasor. Now they were going for an IDW look for this figure, I believe, but just didn't quite nail it. A lot of people were looking for what we ended up getting in the Legacy line, which is of course this version of Menasor. Now, it's almost slightly unfair to compare those two, considering there's quite a leap in time between them and how the engineering came on very quickly. Plus the fact that the Legacy one does cheat, with the base robot mode of Menasor being a shell from the trailer. But I didn't like that Menasor myself either, and again with those really weak ratchets, that mould just became a floppy mess and I eventually moved it on. One thing a lot of people do forget about the Combiner Wars series was that it just wasn't about combiners. We've seen a fantastic version of Ultra Magnus that was very much heavily inspired by the IDW comics and did indeed come with the IDW Minimus Ambus. We've seen other smaller figures as well that did double as weapons for the combiners, such as Power Glide, as well as a few of the Insecticons, and more. The little Shockwave that you're meant to pair with Bruticus was a highlight of many in the Combiner Wars line, and a lot of people do tend to forget that and just focus on the negative of the Combiner Wars combiners as a whole. So do I think the Combiner Wars line was a failure or a success? I still do think it was a success, even though the flaws I've pointed out, that you didn't get all the core characters together initially. The hands and feet were a bit ropey. Some of the moulding, some of the retools were terrible. Some of the plastic quality was also shocking, with degrading of the moulds in a rapid succession. Overall though, getting all these combiner characters again, still retaining that old Scramble City feel, and giving us fan favourites that we hadn't seen in a very long time in a close to Generation 1 form, was lovely and kept me interested in collecting during that sort of lull period in the Transformers fandom. Combiners have always been one of my favourite gimmicks, and just having a whole line dedicated to combiners was amazing at the time, and I definitely bought into the hype. Now, I still do have a lot of the Combiner Wars figures, although I am in the process of upgrading them. As you can see, I do have the Mastermind Creations Bruticus, I have the Legacy Menasor, and I will be getting the Mastermind Creations Defensor as well. But for the time they came out, and for the time I've had them in my collection, I am truly grateful to have experienced the Combiner Wars line. Over to you guys, what do you think? Do you feel the Combiner Wars line was a failure or a success? Let me know in the comment section below why, or better yet, I would love to hear a video response from you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again soon with another discussion one.